Well, good people, it is Phanteks. I haven't been on the channel for a couple of months because of a certain new resident in my household, a certain baby, but I'm back to making videos. Of course, we gotta visit Phanteks first, and one little tidbit we have discovered is Phanteks has rebranded to a new logo. You recognize the slightly earlier version of the P. The font is no longer italic. New logo from Phanteks. All right, so another new thing from Phanteks is the Evolv. Let's go check it out. And huge thanks to our sponsors for making Phanteks possible: Phanteks, Titra, Thermaltake, and Intech. All right, so let's talk about the Evolv. The Evolv X2. This is the new enclosure, and it's pretty sick. Look at this floating, beautiful, motherboard hardware configuration. Partially because we no longer have anything on the side here, so the three-piece glass really reveals all your hardware. The motherboard tray, for example, at the top and the bottom is slightly separated from the main frame, giving you this really interesting look. You don't even see the cables here because the case will support backwards facing motherboard connectors, but this is a prototype, so they're still trying to figure out what would be the best way to showcase a standard ATX motherboard with the cables that are bending around. So here, for example, we see this 24-pin cable channel and the dual 8 pins for your CPU power. This is cool if you want to participate in some DIY elements of inserting your custom cables in here. This will support their Evolv X power supply cables because the sleeve cables that come with that power supply by default. On the interior, we can notice this beautiful accented aluminum. So this one is gold, and because it's a prototype, they're still unsure on what type of color options they'll have available, but I love the gold. It kind of goes towards the RTX 4090 FE with the curvature and the color scheme. And because the exterior of the enclosure is black, it gives you this perception that the case is actually way smaller in footprint than it actually is. So it is a fairly compact mid-tower, but because of all the design ID with the 3 panels, it makes it even smaller. And because the hardware is pushed forward slightly, not only is it good for visual presentation, but it does give you plenty of space at the back for cable management and hiding things so that the cables don't exit directly from the back, but you have a little bit of spacing there to hide them. So we've seen that with the Envy series, and that is kind of getting transferred over to the new Evolv X2 as well. One interesting aspect about the fans at the bottom is that you notice there's a whole cavity for triple 120mm fans. These are the 30mm fan thickness, and they do stick out a little bit, but if you're using standard fans, it is almost flush against the bottom shroud, and they kind of blend in with the frame. So you don't see anything traditional from the enclosure. No fan holes, no little cutouts. Everything is kind of made for triple fans at the bottom. And because we're using the 30mm fans here, the little RGB at the top is just enoughly, that's not a word, Ebert. Enoughly is not a word. And also a really interesting piece over here above the PCI slot covers, this magnetic cover that you'll be able to take out. And right now it's still in prototype, but it will cover your PCIe screws. Therefore, no longer will you be able to see like your traditional pieces of the enclosure. And I'm even hoping that suggesting that they cover the PCI slots as well, like the actual little cutouts. So everything in the back is completely uniform and almost hidden from the traditional little areas that are open on the enclosure. Like you can see, even the rear fan is inside its own frame, so it's nice and flush. Same thing, so this is the new M25 fans, and they are standard 25mm thickness. They do stick out a little bit, and it is a separate bracket. You remove it, you can remove the bracket for easy installation, and this isn't locked into specific Phanteks fans. You can use any fans in here. The top panel ventilation has this interesting design with an angled ventilation channel, so that you don't necessarily see the fans from an angle, but it has a nice integrated dust filter and some color matched power and reset buttons to the interior. And this is something they're thinking about, like what type of color to do. And so if you have any ideas, Ibra suggested black and white. We love the gold, or like the brass. We love the silver. They are potentially also experimenting with like a brushed black aluminum. But because the interior and the exterior are a mix of plastic and metal, it would be nice if this is like a different shade so that it can actually be highlighted, especially with the curve, and the sandblasted aluminum really pops as like the pop of color to distinguish between the interior pieces that is like the height of the enclosure, but also the exterior and how it packages it all together. And we're told height was not an inspiration at all when they are making the top panel, okay? Now cooling wise, you can do a 360 AIO at the top, and we're told performance is not compromised with these bottom fans because we don't have the traditional intake from the front or the side. You do rely on the additional height of the enclosure, but now we also have a power supply at the back, but there is quite a bit of space above the power supply for that back fan to have a little bit breathing room. I mean, in this configuration, GPU cooling should not be a problem, especially because of all this additional intake and exhaust. So we have this vertical volume of air. If you are going with air cooling, that's gonna compromise a little bit on the CPU side, but probably not going to be a problem because this case does cater towards AIOs, and the tubes can be also facing the back and kind of go behind the frame a little bit to hide some of the exiting over here. You can see on even in the system for a slightly cleaner aesthetic. Of course, the integrated case lighting, right now it's not exactly even, but we know Phanteks, they love their symmetry and how these fans will align with the top fans and how this line of lighting will match exactly to the bottom one. And again, this integrated little light strip acts as this beautiful way to accentuate not only the curve and the aluminum pieces, but this separation that gives you that visual cue of a very slim enclosure. And that's pretty awesome. Like, imagine having this computer on your desk on your left side. That's not a compromise at all. Now, price-wise, we're told $149 for the Evolv X2 without any fans. What might influence the price though are the cable combs at the back. I think it's a really fresh direction, especially with this whole floating design and how everything kind of complements the hardware, but just like with the NV7, the case becomes the showcase piece at the same time. And I think that's the right approach. It stands out in the middle of all the traditional boring black boxes that we see all the time, you know? This would have been a perfect transition to talk about the G400, but I don't want to say like it's a boring box. It's like it's a very good enclosure, you know what I mean? All right, let's check out the G400 upgrade with G400A and the N. Now, talking about the Eclipse series, the G400, it's the successor to the P400 series, and they've done some minor refinements to make this a better enclosure in terms of usability, some more interesting features. So first of all, we have a new pattern for the mesh design, which is more brick. It's slightly more open to allow more airflow, but also with the addition of this sort of brick ventilation that follows on the interior too. For a nice uniformity, we have this fine performance dust mesh filter in front of the three fans that are included. And we have this airflow shroud that helps guide airflow and prevents recirculation of the interior air getting back outside. Here you can see the case will only support 140mm fans at the front, which is a good thing because one, the fans are included, and number two, we don't have that small restriction of the frame that will, that mounts 120mm fans. And combine that with the three elements over here, I'm expecting some really decent performance, guys. Here we can see enhanced GPU cooling. Three fans can be mounted on top of the power supply shroud. We also have interior lighting. Phanteks does that very well with beautiful colors, nice uniformity, cool color options. Their new AIO also matches the brick shape for the ventilation mesh at the front, which is nice cohesive design. And the top filter is no longer this mesh plastic filter, it's a metal mesh. As I break my nails, there we go. It's a metal mesh that still looks the same as before, but now it's just a slightly more usable part. So there will be two cases with the G400. The G400A, which is your standard enclosure, comes with 4 fans, but the G400N will feature 3 upgrades. We'll have a tempered glass on the side over here, so not just on one side, but on both sides. And you can see here we have this cutout for the 24-pin cable, allowing you to cleanly route your custom cables over here. That is gonna showcase the color as well. And it will also have the new NextLink hub controller. So for like additional fans, case lighting, and the software as well. And then we have the NV series. So this is going to be a very minor upgrade to support backwards facing motherboard connectors. So the motherboard tray is going to be slightly redesigned for more cutouts. So when you install your backward facing connector motherboard, you don't have to worry about, the cutouts are there for both the NV9 Mark II and the NV, the NV5 here? NV5 Mark II. What about the NV7? Is that gonna be, oh, that's interesting. No NV7. So NV7 is gonna be just Mark 1, and this is going to roll out sometime in July. And the last enclosure over here is the Enthoo Pro 2 XL. So you can notice, does anyone recognize this chassis frame? This is the Enthoo Elite frame, or it's based on that, with a new front grille that's kind of that inspired by some car design with additional ventilation patterns on the interior, so it's not super visible on the inside, so it still gives you that airflow pattern, but with a little bit of that design spice. It's gonna have wheel options, so you can wheel this around, because this thing will get absolutely insanely heavy, will support all types of server motherboards, insane hardware storage capacity. Do you see this? Yeah, dual AIOs, dual socket motherboards. We have 3 graphics cards in there. So this is, with AI words coming around, the buzzwords is AI workstation. And so Phanteks is, getting ready for you to have something like this, so you can, build some AI workstations of yourself. How many times I said AI? It was too many, right? Well, guys, that's been it from Phanteks. Really excited to see what the popularity of the Evolv X2 brings to the whole floating chassis. It is still a prototype. Hopefully we'll see slight refinements here and there, especially with the feet. I recommend that maybe moving the feet slightly back so that the whole chassis feels slightly more elevated. We'll see if that happens, but let me know what you think of the new cases from Phanteks, and I'll talk to you in the next video. And it's good to be back. Yapcha.